In just a week, you are scheduled to give a really important presentation to your executive team, to another high-stakes leadership team. You have never done this before, and right now all you're thinking about is your sweaty palms and your anxiety going through the roof.
I can't do it. I can't do it.
You probably have a manager who said he or she wants to give you some exposure, that this is good for you. Very common. I'm Sonia, and this is Red Thread, where we do deep dives into how to navigate corporate careers without losing your soul, being true to who you are, and leaning into your strengths so you have work experiences that are worth it. I might have an unusual first point. You need to know, what brand do you want to convey of yourself in that meeting? How do you want to show up to these leaders? Are you competent? Are you a doer? Are you a closer? Are you a technician? Are you a problem solver? What is it that you want them to say about you when you leave the room? Because that will help you frame your mindset a little bit and craft your presentation with a certain angle. You want to be true of how you want to be seen, and you need to be clear on how you want to be seen. That is your brand. This is how you represent your team and your manager and potentially your function. The flip side of this idea of who you are is who is in that room. It's really helpful if you understand who your audience is. So yes, you might know these executives from your company website. Maybe you've seen them in the hallway. Maybe you've seen it at a town hall or at other presentations. But who are they and what do they care about? Your presentation can take a very different shape depending on who you see is in that room. Who has a stake in what you're presenting, and what angle could that potentially take? If your presentation doesn't include aspects that talk to all of them, you will lose half that room. You will have to endure more interruptions, and you might not get the decision or the outcome of your presentation that you were hoping or aiming for. So get a list of who is in that meeting, understand what their goal is for that meeting, and what your role is in presenting this particular information at this particular time. Which leads me to point 2. You need to know your ask. What exactly are you presenting and why? What is your ask? Every presentation is not just giving information for the sake of giving information. You might as well send an email. So why are you presenting? It's not just to inform. There's always an ask that you have. You need more time. This is the status of the launch, or this is a proposal we want to do for 2025. What is it that you're asking these particular stakeholders? And that informs you how you structure your presentation. So be very clear on your ask, and then validate that ask with your direct supervisor. He or she might have a very different idea of what the goal is for you to present. So check it. Make sure you understand why you're in that room at that particular time and what your presentation is supposed to do for this group. This leads to point 3. You need to structure your presentation very differently than if you give an update to your team or your function. These are executives. They don't have time, they don't have patience, and they want to move on quickly. So you present like a consultant. You start with the headline and what your ask is, or what your conclusion is, or what your highlight is of that presentation. And then you go into the details of how you got there, or what the supporting information is for that lead. So you do put in the most important thing, not at the end like you would do in a regular presentation as a ta-da moment, but at the beginning, and you work backwards. So this is very different from a regular presentation. Start with the highlight and then work backwards. The advantage of that is that your executives, while you're presenting supporting information or your dashboard or metrics, can think about your ask and your headline in the beginning, because you might be presenting the launch of this product is on target, but we need more money. So you're putting in the highlight and what your ask is in that first slide right out of the gate, and as you then present more details, their brain and their mind is spinning around that ask and that message and whether they're agreeing or not. So it's really important that you flip the normal flow of a presentation into that of a consultant's approach. It's important because that presentation structure is so different that you do not recycle an old presentation. So don't go back to the last 5 presentations you have given about this project. You cannot recycle old slides. Start from scratch. Your brain needs to rethink in a very minimalistic way of what you can present and that it's very short. Executive presentations are very clean, very minimal, and to the point. So you need to rethink, do not rehash and recycle old presentations. It will look like shit. Don't do it. So set yourself a maximum of maybe 5 slides. Maybe you get 30 minutes. In reality, you get 15 minutes because you want to leave time for questions. And very often, if you get put at the end of the agenda, that time even gets reduced. So think of you talking for a maximum of half the time that's allotted to you as presentation time. And that's where you have to fit in your slides. Now, a trap that many newbie presenters make is they create presentations that are full of data that want to show because they want to look competent. They want to look informed. They want to look like they're mastering this topic. You don't have to prove that. You're in that room because this is already implied that you know everything about it. So your executives cannot deal with eye bleed slides that are full of numbers and no story. You need to tell not just the facts, but you need to tell the story. A story has 3 acts. You need to do the setup. What is the outcome that you're going because you're going backwards? What was the middle part of it, the crunchy part, the deliberations, and you need to be very brief and precise in describing that. Challenges you encountered, obstacles you overcame, resources you used, and then the setup, which is the tie into the strategy of the organizations. You didn't do this project because you just thought of it. It has to have significance for these executives. The executives set out at the beginning of the year with a mission. Your project has to have a tie into what the executive goal or the organizational goal was. So that's how you structure it in a 3-act story. You don't have to be a master storyteller. If you have one example for any of the chapters, great, but don't overthink it. This brings me to my next point. You need to have some allies in the room. This is not a nice, welcoming, comfy little room you're stepping into. This is potentially a very contentious, political, high ego driven environment, and you do not know who is friend or foe. You need to find out before you even present. So my tip here is to create an ally. You need to know who is on your side when you're presenting, because you have an ask, who will support your ask in that room. The easiest way is to assume it's your boss in the function. So if you're in sales, it's your chief revenue officer. If you're in product development, it's your CTO. If you're in finance, it's your CFO. Don't assume they are. My suggestion is that you tell your boss that you want to do a preview for your functional leader so they're not surprised by anything that you're presenting, because at the end of the day, you're representing your function and your larger team. Get time on the calendar with that top executive from your function and run your presentation by them. So you're presenting as if it's the real deal, and that executive then can help you what to cut, what to include, what to put in the appendix, because they are highly interested that you make them look good as well. Your second ally is your executive admin. They can protect you from all kinds of mishaps, from having wrong information on the slides to not having the right slides. Your executive admin can be a lifesaver, and is a lifesaver if you ask nicely and if you build that relationship. So go to them before the presentation, days before, and say, would you mind taking a look at my presentation and tell me if I need to cut something on the content, if it's too busy, and give me recommendations for improvement. They've seen hundreds and thousands of presentations. They've seen it all, and they often prepare all these presentations so they can tell you when your 5,000 transitions are just irritating, or they give you the template that is used specifically for executive presentations. They can help you out when your tech will fail, and very often tech is an issue in these executive presentations because you have multiple monitors, you have online, you have in real world, you have different conference rooms that you're not used to. So be sure you are running by all the potential tech traps by your executive admin and get their help. So that's ally number 2. And the third one is your boss. Hopefully your boss is in the room or present, but you need somebody. If it's not your boss, then it needs to be that functional leader. When a question comes up that's above your pay grade, which it will, they need to step up. So in your trial presentation with that executive leader, ask them and say, if I get a question from another executive that I don't feel comfortable answering or I don't have the knowledge, can I defer to you? And they will say yes, but you need to be clear that this will be the strategy. So it's clear to them and to you that if there's a question coming up that's above your pay grade, you have backup, because you need a more powerful ally on your side, because these derailer questions will come. This leads me to my next point. Don't expect this to be a smooth ride. This is not the function of an executive. That's not what they're there for or how they see presentations that come to them. They want to be active participants in your presentation. They will interrupt you. They will ask questions. They will not let you finish. They will ask questions that might seem dumb to you, like, did you think of this? Of course you thought of this. This was part of the deliberation of how this project got evolved, problem solving, anything. But you cannot disagree with an executive or make them look stupid in front of their colleagues. So this is a super important part where I've seen people destroy their careers by either going into endless debates or telling an executive they are wrong, or that this is more or less a dumb question. Avoid at all costs. So your strategy is whatever comes up as a question, whether it sounds intelligent to you or not, you always say yes. For instance, you could get a question like, this sounds like a great project. This system will help all these other teams, but that system will not work for my team. We're going to stick with the old format. So clearly, this is not what you want. Your proposal is meant to affect all teams and all functions positively. So one executive saying, yes, but no thank you for my team is not what you want. In that case, you cannot argue with that executive and say, of course it will be, and we have to, and this is meant for the da. Stop it. Just say, yes, we will make sure we work with your team in particular, make sure there are no barriers, blah, blah, blah. So expect that there is derailer question that try to sideline you. When you get a derailer question or a challenge or something that seems like to question your entire presentation and the value of your knowledge, take a deep breath. This is not about you. This is about an executive who might have other motives to speak up or try to torpedo that presentation. And in that way, you need that ally to deflect. So then you defer to your manager or that executive leader of your own function and say, may I defer to John, who might have some additional comments. This is not your job to save the day and argue with a particular executive. All right, so now you know you need to figure out how you want to show up for that meeting, what kind of aura or brand you want to give in, what kind of energy you want to leave with, what the structure of your presentation needs to be like, what your ask is, who you can anticipate support or opposition from in that team. You're comfortable with that room and you know how you're presenting and you practice that, standing in that room or being online. And now I'm going to tell you a few things that really don't have as much impact as you might think it does. And so please don't stress out over these little things that really, in the big scheme of things, won't have an impact on the quality of your presentation or the outcome. Number one, nobody cares about your ums and ahs and the fluidity of your presentation and whether you turn around and whether you look down or your posture. At the end of the day, they listen to you. Yes, they see you, but they know you're young and this is new to you and you're not totally polished. You haven't had enough skill training on that. So they will overlook that. So don't get anxious because you are not as easily presenting as maybe somebody more experienced. Your accent also doesn't matter. If English is not your native language, nobody cares. Lots of people have accent. People have different rhythms, different cadence, different body language, different way to standing or motioning. It doesn't matter. you're fine. It also doesn't matter how nervous you are. I know this is maybe counterintuitive. If people see you're nervous, if your voice is breaking, if you need to cough, if you need to swallow, if you need to breathe, nobody cares. The executives are looking at that slide. So you will have time to gather yourself if you catch yourself getting stuck. And again, you have allies in that room. You're not alone. You're not exposed. You have backup. And as long as you practice and you know exactly what you want, you're fine. Which is my last point. Practice, practice, practice. No athlete would go out not warmed up, not trained, not having eaten the right thing the night before, not having slept the night before, or trying to prepare for the competition a day before. This is not the time to cram. A good presentation is really the result of every day doing a little bit towards that goal of delivering an impactful, meaningful presentation that is memorable to that audience and gives you the ask that you're asking for. Last point that often gets neglected as well from presenters is the follow-up. You're a newbie. You're doing this for the first or second time. You want to learn from it. Hopefully it's not the last time you're presenting to executives. So think about your follow-up. Who will you follow up with? This is not about a gushing thank you for listening to my proposal kind of thank you. This is a follow-up to continue the action items on your ask for that particular person. So each person had their own interest. The CFO was interested about the cost of your project. The sales team is concerned about what customers will think about your project and the impact it will have. So each executive has their own agenda of whether this was important and relevant to them and to which degree it will impact their team. So you follow up with each executive specifically to their need, what their question was during or concern was during the presentation. You validate that and you let them know how you will follow up and address it. That will get you so many bonus points, and it will make the presentation linger on as a positive event of impression of who you are and what you can do for this company, which is what you wanted to do. I hope this was helpful. Good luck to you. You got this.